Hello YouTube. Let me tell you today about a very interesting place in Russia, and it kind of embodies the paranormal and also near paranormal phenomena in the former Soviet Union and Russia, and you could find patterns of other investigations I've done, and which you can see in my videos. I think you will like this account. For many years, this island of Gorodomlya on Russian lake Seliger was known for its monastery. The famous Russian painter Ivan Shishkin also glorified the city on that island, or the town. He painted his famous painting Morning in a Pine Forest, and we'll get to him later. But after the war in 1946, the island became classified because here they began to create the first missiles for the defense of the Soviet Union. And I'm talking about ballistic missiles. Over time, the closed enterprise where those missiles were created became the Zvezda plant or factory. And the specialists here have been collecting and assembling gyroscopes for the space industry of the Soviet Union and Russia. And you can understand that the accuracy of space rockets flight depends on such devices. Well, the full story of the island you cannot really find in any decent encyclopedia. Russian researchers managed to find out, I think, some of the details of the life of this secret island, surrounded by a beautiful pine forest. It was first mentioned back in the 17th century, and Boris Lykov was the first boyar or Russian aristocrat, the first visitor to this island. And when he saw this beautiful nature, he said, "We need to send an artist here," according to Galina Golovanova, the director of the Zvezda Enterprise Museum, where the gyroscopes are collected, and as I mentioned, they're very important for the space industry. So when the famous Russian painter Ivan Shishkin came to the island, he walked through the forest, and he really got inspired by this island. And that's where he painted two of his most famous paintings, Morning in Pine Forest and Sheep Grove. And to people from this former Soviet Union, those paintings are quite endearing. He was thinking about turning this village into a forest, and the Russian aristocrat who owned this forest, so to say, didn't know what to do. So he selected an easier choice, and he presented the monastery. He presented it to the monastery. And after the communist power grab in 1917, the monks were expelled from the island. And at that time, the authorities took care of the agriculture themselves. Not as good as the monks, of course. When you get collectivist people into means of production, they cannot do anything. They can talk a lot, but they cannot really work. And sometime later, a so-called Foot and Mouth Disease Institute was opened on the island, devoid of the monks and most of the population, of course. So they were dealing with anthrax, cholera, smallpox. But the most important thing is that somewhere in 1935, 1938, the first development of the penicillin, the first stage, was made on that island, according to those who lived there. The island was surrounded at the time by 2 rows of barbed wire, and there was paramilitary security at that island. Very well guarded. Vaccines against various dangerous diseases were created on that island. Now, in 1941, World War II breaks out in the Soviet Union, and the military unit stationed there was evacuated. You see, the Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin was afraid that the development would fall to the enemy. So he signed an order to load everything on the steamships assigned for this and take it off the island. I guess everything they worked on, all the vaccines and who knows what else. Well, the steamships only reached Krapivinka, and it is no longer known whether they were blown up or not, according to Golovanova. So this still is a mystery. I am wondering if the ships went down and whatever was aboard remained in the lake. We'll get to it later. The real secret work began on that island after the war. See, in 1946, the Germans appeared on the island. The chief designer there was an outstanding rocket scientist. This was Grettrup. He organized everything well on the island, according to Golovanova. Helmut Grettrup is a famous German rocket engineer who developed control systems for ballistic missiles. On the island of Gorodomlya, he and leading German scientists created and tested rockets for the Soviet defense industry and cosmonautics or space industry. Famous designer and father of the Russian space industry and development and projects, Georgy Karlov, he visited those Germans every week. He was also testing fuel there. He was looking for such fuel for Soviet rockets so it could overcome gravity. And of course the roar of the engines that were launched on the island as well as various fuels were tested. So the residents were very scared. After war, there was a war not far away very recently. Again, according to Galina Golovanova. Now, in the USSR, it was not customary to write or to reveal what role the POW specialists from Germany played in the creation of the Soviet defense shield after World War II. And if you look at my video about Kapustin Yar, this will remind you what I'm about to tell you. The development of the Soviet atomic bomb, the first Soviet ballistic missiles, the first Soviet jet combat aircraft seemed to be an achievement exclusively of Soviet scientists and engineers. This is what we were told repeatedly. But only in recent decades have we begun to receive some information that without the assistance of captured Germans, as well as Soviet intelligence operatives who were very actively working in the United States with the help of local sympathizers, this achievement could not have been done. At the end of World War II, the United States and the USSR launched a hunt for German specialists who were developing superweapons. For Hitler, V-1 and V-2 missiles, jet combat aircraft, and an atomic bomb. The Americans were in a better position since they occupied an incomparably larger part of Germany than the one that was under the control of the Soviet Union. In addition, many German specialists tried in the last days of the war to move to the west, to surrender to the Americans and not to the Red Army. So a long and dangerous trip from Thuringia to the Bavarian Alps was made by the designer of the V-2 rockets, Werner von Braun, who later became the general designer of the unique Saturn V rockets in the United States, one of the leaders of the Apollo lunar program. But the Soviet Union also got something from the intellectual potential of the defeated Third Reich. On May 8, 1945, academician Igor Kurchatov presented the head of the Soviet atomic program and also head of the secret police, Lavrenti Beria, with a list of those German nuclear scientists whom it would be desirable to find and involve in cooperation. In the summer of the same year, specialists in rocket technology and jet aviation who were discovered by Soviet intelligence were also seized in the Soviet occupation zone of Germany. Among German nuclear specialists, Manfred von Ardenne, an outstanding inventor, one of the fathers of the Soviet hydrogen bomb, twice winner of the Stalin Prize. He should be put in the first place. Nikolaus Ril, who headed the production of enriched uranium for the first Soviet atomic bomb, became not only the winner of the Stalin Prize of the first degree, but also a hero of the socialist labor and the recipient of the Order of Lenin. In 1955, he was allowed to go not to East Germany like the rest of the German specialists, but to West Germany. Nobel Prize winner Gustav Hertz, the nephew of the great physicist, also received the Stalin Prize. They were awarded to German prisoners of war scientists for their work for the benefit of Soviet defense. And this is the clearest evidence of the assessment by the leadership of the USSR and their contribution to the creation of the Soviet nuclear shield. A group of German rocket scientists in the USSR was headed by Helmut Gertrup, who during the war led one of the departments of the Rocket Center in Peenemünde. I heard that he was also arrested for Gestapo for a while for, I guess, his unconventional thinking. Curiously, he first surrendered to the Americans together with von Braun, but Soviet intelligence officers operating in the American occupation zone managed to turn him over in 1945. He was testing fuel on the island, and he was looking for such fuel for Soviet rockets, so it could also overcome gravity, and he was helping Karlov with that. Subsequently, Gertrup was also allowed to travel to Germany. The Soviet competent authorities also managed to get at their disposal the chief designer of jet engines of the Junkers Aviation Company, Alfred Schweibe, and the designer of the jet aircraft engines of the BMW company, Dr. Prestel. Hundreds of their POW colleagues worked under the leadership of German specialists. So according to the order of the Council of Ministers of the USSR, dated April 17, 1946, until October of the same year, 250 engineers and designers and 240 aircraft engine workers from the city of Dessau, 150 engineers and designers and 200 workers of the same industry from the city of Unserburg were required to be transported to the plant number 145 in the village of Krasnaya Glinka in the Kuybyshev region, Samara. I talked to you recently about that town and what happened there. Anyway, the Germans lived together with their families in separate villages and sanatoriums. Or resorts. They were under protection, but they were also provided with relatively preferential treatment. From time to time, tourist trips were arranged for them, for example, to Moscow and to the Bolshoi Theater. And for the children of German jet engine specialists in the same Krasnaya Glinka, as testified by one of the top Soviet designers, who was subordinate to the German engine builders, a school was organized in which Germans were being taught. Well, here's the official Russian line. How can we assess the contribution of captured German scientists to the creation of the latest Soviet weapon system that ensured military parity after World War II and prevented World War III? It was very significant, and without their assistance, the USSR could indeed hopelessly lag behind the United States in the arms race and therefore tempt its probable opponent to attack. After all, they do not attack the strong, but the weak, or the one who seems weak. So the work of the German nuclear physicists greatly helped in the rapid establishment of the production of enriched uranium and plutonium, in the development of the hydrogen bomb. The test of the first atomic bomb in the USSR in 1949, discovered by the Americans by increased radiation in air samples over the Pacific Ocean, was a real shock for the American military, but especially for the American intelligence services. It was also a blow to their prestige. And even bigger shock for them was the test of the first Soviet hydrogen bomb, adapted for dropping from an airplane in 1953. And again, the official line is that we can safely say that without the assistance of German specialists, this day, and of course, with the work of Soviet intelligence officers, these dates would have to be moved to a large later date, meaning without their help they could not create the bombs at that time. 150 German specialists worked at the Rocket Research Institute 88 top secret facility under the supervision of Georgy Karlov. With their help in 1948, it was possible for the first time to copy and launch a Soviet V-2 called the R-1, and Stalin instructed not to play around, but to copy V-2 as accurately as possible. And they also took part, those Germans, in the development of a more advanced ballistic missiles, of which the R-5, launched in 1953, had a range of 1,200 kilometers. The Germans were also involved in the first steps to develop an intercontinental ballistic missile of unlimited range R-7, which in 1957, after the German rocket scientists had already left for their homeland, put the first artificial Earth satellite into orbit. Okay, so Germans helped to create this missile that launched the first satellite into space. Well, of course, the German airplanes like Junker jet engine became the main engine on Soviet aircraft. I won't go through the whole list. That's enough to tell that they had a lot of involvement, much more than anybody knew or wanted to reveal. And even the Soviet first jet fighters themselves were largely copied from existing or designed German models. So this was very interesting, but again, you have to buy into the whole notion of the Cold War, and after decades of research, I stopped buying into that. I think that both sides knew what they were doing, exchanging information, getting German scientists to reveal their knowledge, of course, and getting prepared to face jointly another enemy or an adversary, which was much stronger than either the United States or the Soviet Union or Russia separately. Anyway, over time, the closed enterprise became the Zvezda plant that on the island where the Germans worked. And the specialists there have been collecting and assembling gyroscopes, checking them, working on them, preparing them. We turn on the device, set a certain temperature, which is set. After reaching the temperature, all sensors are connected. For example, a torque sensor shows how gyroscopes are tested. The controller of electronic equipment, Zinaida Smirnova, told Russian media. This is perhaps the most important moment of the work. Gyroscopes, high-precision instruments, are being tested there on the island. It depends on them where the rocket will go and how accurately it will fly. It's hard to imagine the slightest mistake of one person can affect the entire space industry. Great responsibility. We understand, we work with the instruments, that those instruments that go into space. Zinaida Smirnova noted the importance of her contribution to the Russian space industry. Well, the halo of secrecy and the stamp of secrecy has been somewhat erased over the years from both the island and its inhabitants. However, they still remain silent about the secrets of the city and their work. Tradition, less words, more action. So they work so that their missiles go as high and as far as possible. Listen, Lake Seliger is one of the places that Vladimir Putin likes to come to. He holds annual conferences there. Lake Seliger is a legendary reservoir on the Valdai Plain in the Tver and Novgorod regions, about which there are many myths and folk legends. The lake consists of several isolated areas called ples. It has a total area of 212 square kilometers of water surface and about 160 islands. These places are very often visited by tourists and travelers. In the year 2000, there were rumors that strange relict animals with long necks and tails allegedly live in the lake. They have the name of the name given to them is Selizharovsky, and this is where animals with small heads and flipper-like limbs were first observed, and the nickname is Selizhazors, like dinosaurs, or Selizhazors. And for example, Russian journalist Ivanov reported that most often these monsters crawled ashore near the village of Pavliha, and even on the road from Pavliha to Klimova mountain. So if you, when the travel opens up and you go to Russia, and if you can visit Lake Seliger, you know where possibly Russian aquatic monsters reside. Among all other lakes I told you about, Seliger is one of them, near the village of Pavliha. Rumors that mysterious creatures live in Lake Seliger first appeared, like I said, in the year 2000. And strange relict animals with long necks and tails have been reported more than once. And again, the report is that the monsters' heads are quite small compared to massive bodies. Look, again, Pavliha and the road to Klimova mountain is the best year to say. I think it was in 2018 in the summer that Moscow tourists encountered those Selizhazors, and it happened in the area of the so-called Devil's Gate. This is the name of the deepest place on Seliger, between the islands of Klichin and Gorodomlya. According to eyewitnesses, something huge rose to the surface, resembling the back of a whale. As soon as it disappeared under the water again, huge waves arose, and it was a windless day. And recently, the back of an unknown animal that surfaced in the lake of Klichin was again seen by several people at once. It turns out that the question of the existence of unknown animals in the lake of the Tver region has not yet been closed. There was also an interesting legend about Mongol invasion times, when the horde of Batu Khan actually hit a whole wagon train of looted goods, and the time of the Russian Empress Catherine II, a commission from St. Petersburg, arrived there, and the people had with them a map and papers indicating the location of the treasure. It is said that if you dig from the east, you will come across a cast iron door, and behind it such wealth that will be enough for the whole Tver province over 100 of years. But you know what? Something scared those Muscovites, and they left. They didn't find any treasure, or if they found something, nobody knew. Maybe not even the Empress. What's interesting is there have been rumors about UFOs over the area of Seliger, but as you can understand, with the classified island and so much attention from the authorities, not really much has been heard in the pre-war and war years. And I think most information started coming out after the end of the Soviet Union. And I have a very interesting report from 2019 when a Russian tourist observed something in the sky and made photos of it. Nobody's sure what it is. They thought, well, maybe it's the northern lights, so to say. Maybe it's man-made explosion in the sky. Maybe it was a lightning. Maybe it was a UFO. Nobody knows. But it's a very interesting area. And the Lake Seliger itself, it was formed over 20,000 years ago. It's a very beautiful, unusual lake. It's not Lake Baikal, but it's as unique in many ways as Lake Baikal is. And the name comes from the ancient Finnish words. So it's an interesting area to visit in Russia, but it also, contained this secret history of the Soviet rocket and missile developments and these captured Nazi scientists working in the Soviet Union under very good conditions. And as you know, where they had missile development and launches of spacecraft, UFOs followed. You can see it from videos and information I have presented. So I wanted to give you this piece of information about Russia, and of course I'll bring you more stories, but to me it kind of shows patterns coming together. And of course it's interesting that they have information about relic animals, aquatic animals. I don't know what happened. Maybe something aboard those sunken steamships actually seeped into the waters of the lake. I just don't know enough. Anyway, I will continue telling you about Russian paranormal. Thank you to those who support my channel, and if you can, there are links in the description to this video. Please subscribe, please tell others about my channel, please like it. Thank you.